So, just introduce yourself and maybe give some little background about your work. We'll get started into technical.
So my name is good evening. My name is Ritvik. I live in Dwarka, Delhi. So right now I am working with KMG IT Services, which is a software development company located in Udyog Vihar, Gurgaon. So right now I am working as an infrastructure and cloud engineer there. So 50% of that includes cloud. So in cloud, all the resources which are required for the production environment, my task is to create those resources. Apart from that, they are monitoring, and since it's a software development company, so a little bit of DevOps part is also included. And the rest 50% is IT internal operations, in which my task is to manage servers and firewalls and all those stuff related to IT infrastructure. So in this company, I have been working since 2.5 years. And prior to that, I was working with Cisnet Global Technologies and HCL Technologies.
Okay. So, currently, what are your roles and responsibilities day to day?
In cloud or internal operations? Hello?
No, like both I'm asking.
So if I talk about the IT internal operations, so we are using Sophos 210XG firewall. So management of all those policies and which user can access what data. Apart from that, we have created servers according to the client requirement, which are on premise, and some of them are in cloud. So both on premise and cloud servers are there. And apart from that, basic like in switches we have created VLAN, etc. So all those stuffs come under IT internal operations, and my task is to manage all that stuff and monitoring the internet links and all those things. And if I talk about the cloud part, so as I have told, all the resources which are required to create it for the production environment and their monitoring. And apart from that, some of the migrations were also done in the past. And if I talk about the domestic clients, we have Hughes and Eli Lilly, and there are several 5 to 6 other domestic clients. So I have to go there physically sometimes on the deputation, and whatever the requirements are, I fulfill that. And if I talk about the international projects, so those are US based projects. So for example, Convelo is there, LAMP is there, Med USA, and several others. And apart from that, a little bit of also includes the DevOps part, in which we use several of the tools like Docker and Kubernetes and Jenkins, so all those stuff, and their monitoring.
Okay, fine. So, you did AWS SysOps Administration certificate, is it?
Right now, I am preparing for it. So previously, I was a CCNA certified until June 2020. But what happened was that prior to this company, I was in a hardcore network related stuff. And in HCL Technologies, for initially 3 to 4 months, I was in desktop support, and after that, I did CCNA and became a network engineer. But in this company, apart from the network infrastructure, cloud was also there. So right now, I'm preparing for cloud for the past 2 to 3 months.
Okay, fine. Yeah, let's get started into some technical discussions. So, what are the major areas that you have worked in AWS?
So in AWS, like I have told you that whatever the requirements of the client are for their production environment, and whether they are Linux and Windows Server, and previously sometime back, around 1 month back, AWS has also introduced the Mac related VMs. So we are moving into that only, that all those also. And basically the creation of resources for the production environment, so which may be in Windows or maybe in Linux, both. And apart
Okay,
from
fine.
that, their monitoring and their metrics and their threshold, and basically end-to-end management of the infrastructure. So some of the projects have gone, some are to be started, and some are ongoing. So, and some are used basically completely on cloud, and some are completely on premise. So
Fine. So, oh, in network, what is the main component in AWS?
in AWS, the main component of the network is VPC, Virtual
Oh,
Private Cloud.
yeah. So, VPC, if you want to create a VPC, what is the main thing that we require?
So to create a VPC, one is by default, and if we want to create our own VPC, so we have to create the route tables and subnets and the gateways and supply the IPs.
No. Route table subnets are mandatory to create a VPC.
Yes,
Okay. And
because without them, the communication will not take place, because the subnets are used to segment the network. So if we are using two-tier architecture, so one will be for the web server and one will be for the database server. And routing table routes the data to different subnets, and the gateway uh, is responsible for moving the data to and fro, internet gateway between public network to our VPC.
okay. So in route table, what is the advantage of route table and how we use that?
So the main task of the route table is to route the traffic to the destination. Without it is the routing table only through which the path of the data is defined.
Okay, so when you create a route table, by default, do we have any routes?
Yes, by default we have the routes, and if we want to move the if we want to create our own route table, so we can also create them. And
Now, what is the default routes that we find in route tables?
so the default route is basically the route, basically the 0.0.0.0/0, so traffic can move anywhere. So it is based on the longest prefix. Default route works on the based on the longest prefix rule. And if we want to route our own data, so for that we can create our own route tables.
Okay. So there is something called DHCP option set, right? What is that in AWS?
So if I talk about the DHCP, so if I talk about in generic terms, so the DHCP is dynamic host configuration protocol, so which works on the DORA, so which is used to automatically assign IP to inside a local area network. So in our company we have created a DHCP server. So if you want, we'll manually assign the IP, so that may lead to a lot of conflicts. So the generic term about the DHCP is that in local area network. And if I talk about the cloud, so DHCP, apart from assigning the IPs, DHCP has one more concept, that it is used to create and control the DNS endpoints in AWS. So
Okay.
the networking concepts, there are some networking concepts which have been modified by the AWS, according to their requirement.
Okay. So what are VPC endpoints?
If we want to avoid the use of the NAT gateway and move the data to other services privately and not through the public network, so for that we can use VPC endpoints.
Okay. And let's say I have so many accounts, AWS accounts, and so many VPCs in different accounts. And if you want to communicate from one service to other services in different VPCs, which service we can use?
VPC pairing. So it will
Okay.
create a private connection between VPC to VPC. So the practical example of that is in one VPC we have a web server, and in another VPC for the redundancy purpose and for the disaster recovery purposes, and in one area we have the database server. Apart from that, we can take the help of the IAM and create a role for the different account.
So I said, like, I will have 100 numbers of accounts and in more than 500 more than 100 VPCs.
Mhm.
So still, do you feel VPC peering is helpful here?
No. Basically, first of all, I have not worked in such a large kind of infra, such big numbers of VPCs I have not handled. So for that, we will have to take either take the help of the IAM, or we will have to create a policy in IAM for those accounts. And if even if the problem is not solved, we will have to get in touch with the AWS, because it is a very large. Uh,
Okay, fine. Yeah. How many ways we can restrict traffic in AWS?
we can create security groups, we can create NACLs, we can create virtual firewalls, and we can create the policies in IAM. So these are 3 to 4 ways which I am aware of.
Okay. So what is the difference between NACL and security group?
So one is stateful and one is stateless. So the in stateful, if inbound traffic is allowed, outbound is automatically allowed, and in stateless, so if inbound is allowed, outbound is also to be allowed. So NACL is stateless, and security group is stateful.
Is that the only difference, or is there any other difference?
So NACLs can be applied like after when we are creating an EVM. So security groups are configured at that time only. NACL can be modified later, and apart from that, the NACLs are better security, provide better security. Apart from that, security groups, and in security groups, we use port numbers. We can use the random port numbers, and in NACL we have to define the numbers, and according to the priority is set from top to bottom, and in between we have to give the number like 100 and 200 and 300. So these kind of, so the major difference between these is the statefulness and statelessness.
What is the minimum amount of IP addresses subnet we can create?
Minimum amount, maximum maximum number of subnets are 200, and minimum are already created 3 by default.
No, I'm asking what is the minimum amount of IP addresses that we can get from a subnet?
From a subnet,
Yeah.
I think minimum should.
Okay.
No, I am reflecting. Basically, 2 raised to power n, and we have to subtract -5 to get the. So basically to get the number of IPs, 2 raised to power n minus 5 is the formula.
Yeah, I need to ask what is the minimum IPs that we can?
I think that should be 2, because we calculate via this formula only, and apart from that, we keep some IPs in our pool. So minimum we have not tried, but to calculate the formula, 2 raised to power n minus 5 is that. So 5 IPs excluded are network ID, broadcast ID, DNS, and one is reserved, and one is for other purpose.
Okay. So, have you launched DC2 instances?
Yes.
Which are the servers that you mostly work, whether Linux or Windows?
Both.
Okay. So when you say you launched instances, is it manual or is it any automation that you use?
No, we have created the in a manual way. So if I talk about the automation, so automation is done via auto scaling. So if the metrics are being breached, so those are created automatically. And apart from that, automation create automation for the creation of EC2 instance is in that way that if the EC2 instance is like crossing any metric, or we have to stop any EC2 instance in the night time. So for that, we have used the JSON script, attached it with the cloud, and we used cron jobs with the lambda function. So using that way, that was accomplished.
Okay. What is a launch template?
So launch template is basically used in conjunction with the auto scaling. So we have to create the launch template, and we have to assign the EC2 instances in that, and after that the auto scaling is accomplished.
Okay. Okay, let's say you have launched one server and you probably provided that to your team, and since 1 week they are using that server. Okay. And when you come in the next day morning, so your team is reporting you that that server they are not able to access. So what is the first thing you will check?
We will check the I will try to connect to that server either through the command prompt or that putty, and whether that is being connected or not. And apart from that, I will check my dashboard, and in the dashboard there are instance status checks. So apart from that, if that EC2 instance is attached with any monitoring tool such as the Nagios or Prometheus or Grafana, so check those logs, and if that is attached to the CloudWatch, so check CloudWatch logs, because that will give a very detailed information about what was happening to that EC2 instance. And if instance status checks are not proper, so we will start that EC2 instance, and if it is not fixed, so we will take the snapshot of it, or either detach the volume and create a new EC2 instance and attach that volume to the newly created, and remove the previous one.
Yeah, so in what scenarios your public IP address will get changed?
So if you want that the public IP should not change, so for that we can use the elastic IP. Otherwise, public IPs are prone to change.
Yeah, that's what. In what scenario it will change, I asked.
That I haven't noticed.
Okay.
As per regarding IP addresses, my knowledge is that if you don't want to change the public IP addresses, so we can use the elastic IP, and the private IPs inside the VPCs are not changed. So if
fine. In security groups, like what are all the source type it will support?
Source type means?
Like if you want to allow some traffic from particular source, what are all the source types that it will support?
So source types means the particular port. So suppose if we want to allow the HTTPS traffic, so we will open the 443 port, and if we want to allow any
that is port. I'm asking from where it asks, right? So source type
in security groups.
Yes.
So source is from the end server, or the server which is present in our AWS.
Yeah, it is for our AWS server only.
So the security group will be attached to that EC2 instance, so that will be attached to that source server, and whatever the ports which we have allowed and denied, based upon that the traffic will move to and fro.
Okay. with Route 53.
Yes.
What is weighted routing policy?
So in weighted routing policy, so we assign several weights. So based upon those weights, if we have assigned around 50% weights, so half of the traffic will go will be moved to basically the traffic is passed based upon the ratio. So suppose 66% of the weights are given to one server and 33% are given to another. So the 66% of the load will be handled by the one server and 33% will be another.
What is the difference between public and private hosted zones?
So public hosted zone means the hosted zone which can access the internet, and private hosted zones so that will work only within the cloud and will not be exposed to the outside the network. So we can uh, uh, if I talk about any example, so suppose there is any portal which we want to see within the on premises, and public internet people in the public internet should not see that website or something.
Yeah.
So that is the practical example.
So, have you created IAM users?
Yes, I am users I have created. So if I talk about the on premise, so we have some critical data. So department wise we have created, and they move their data accordingly. And apart from that, using IAM for the clients also, we have to give access, temporary access to the clients. So for that we create roles.
Access to IAM users.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. What type of IAM user access types we can give to user?
So in access type, basically we give the rights inside the resources. So if we want, so suppose if I want to give the access to the S3 read only. So
no, that is permission. I'm asking about what kind of type of accesses you can give to user.
So one is the user based, and one is the inbuilt cloud. So there are various types of policies like inline policies and customer managed policies and cloud based policies. So the policies which are created by us.
So you work with Docker also, right?
Yes.
So can you tell me the difference between Docker build and Docker compose?
So Docker build is used to create an image in Docker, and Docker compose is used to build multiple images inside the same file. So if we want to add the usage of Docker run again and again, and if we want to so suppose there is a microservices architecture, and that is to be wrapped up in a single file. So for that we use compose file, which is written in YAML format, and there are 3 versions of that. And if I talk about Docker build, so to build an image we use Docker build command, and to convert into the container we use Docker.
Yeah, if we want to remove all stopped containers and images which are not using all the build caches, what is the command that we use?
So of all of the unwanted resources inside the Docker can be removed using Docker prune command.
Okay. So what are the mount types that we can find in Docker?
There are 2 types. One is bind mount and one is volume mount.
Okay. Okay, so you don't know about the cloud formation, right?
No, I know Terraform.
Okay, you worked on Terraform.
Cloud formation is not used.
Okay, fine. So let's say I want to migrate some of the workloads from on-premises to AWS.
Yes.
What is your approach?
So first of all, we will look what the that our requirement is. So suppose if there is any database, so first of all we can, for testing purpose, we can use move to the EC2 instance, and based upon our requirement we can create the size of the volume, and using WinSCP move that database and create the database server. For the demo purpose is everything is working fine, so use the DMS service, create source and destination endpoints, and move the and make the replication instances, and using the test command test the task, and then create the RDS in the cloud. So that is for the databases. And if I talk about the web servers, so create a demo EC2 instance which incurs very less cost, and move all of the data using WinSCP, and like if
So let's say I have 1,000 servers on premises. So then what is the best approach?
So 1,000 servers I have not moved, because in our company there are 21 servers. So if there are 1,000 servers,
how do you manage patching for your servers?
What?
How are you managing the patching for your servers?
WSO server, Windows Server Update Service.
Okay. And yeah, there is something called run command in Systems Manager, right? What is that?
So that I don't remember.
Okay. Have you worked with CloudFront?
Yes, a little bit. Basically, the static website I have used.
Okay. So CloudFront supports what are the origin types?
Origin.
Yeah.
So in origin types, basically we can pull the data which is stored. So I have used S3 in the origin group. Apart from that, as far as my knowledge is there, because I used CloudFront around 5 to 6 months back. EC2
Okay.
or so we have to pull the data from that stuff we want to host, and apart from that we have to there are several settings and the regions and the protocols, and after that we host in CloudFront. So basically the caching of the data in nearby servers to reduce latency, so for that we use CloudFront.
Okay, so what is the default time frame of CloudWatch metrics that we get?
5 minutes.
Okay, so is it possible we can go with a lesser time frame?
If we pay to AWS, so they will reduce to 1 minute.
Okay. So what are the CloudWatch data points?
CloudWatch data points?
Yeah.
No idea. I haven't heard this term before.
Okay. Okay, so can you just tell me what are the runtimes a Lambda function can support? Some examples.
Runtime means?
Okay, you don't have an idea. Have you worked with Lambda function?
Yes. So in Lambda function, whenever an event is triggered, so for that we have to write an script. So One of the script
Okay.
was in JSON and one was in Python. So basically that was a part of the project. So for the triggering
Okay.
events, like I told you that an EC2 instances, several of them were required to be stopped at the night time. So for that
Fine.
we had used JSON script. So basically
Can
the
you? Yeah.
serverless computing is provided by the Lambda, and the supported languages are PowerShell, Go, and the Node.js, Java, C++, etc.
Okay. Can you explain how RDS multi-AZ works, high availability works?
So they have their inbuilt facility, managed facility. So whenever we create any database, so that is replicated in 3 regions for the redundancy. And apart from that, the redundancy which is provided is by default 7 days, and which can range up to maximum 35 days. And if you don't want that, so we can set it to 0.
Okay. We covered 30 minutes, given. So before we drop off, any questions for me?
No, sir.
Okay, fine. Okay, Ritvik, thank you. I will share my feedback.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.